Good afternoon, everyone. Hugo, welcome. The party is complete. To Governor Dayton, it's a privilege to be here with you. It's a privilege as this historical moment where your portrait is added to the 39 other governors of this great state that are displayed here in the Capitol is added tonight. To your family, Hugo, and everyone else that's with that, thank you all for being here. The Dayton family has given so much to this state. The time that Governor Dayton was here is a piece of that will continue on with this generation that is giving so much. So we are grateful for that. To our representatives from the judiciary, Chief Justice, thank you for being here. To our elected officials from the Senate and the House, thank you for that. I believe we have our constitutional officers here. Grateful to you too. And then to Minnesotans and those who aren't in the room tonight, to understand the importance of acknowledging the service that someone's given, especially over a lifetime that Mark Dayton has given, and taking time just to pause. Now, I know everybody in this building knows of the Governor Dayton's passion and love for the state, his commitment to making Minnesota better, and also his legendary humility. And pretty hard to get him here. As we were just saying, thank goodness for the grandkids to be the ones to get there. But it's important for all of us to pause and think about what Governor Dayton did. And I think there are several things that are pretty apparent. One is this very building we stand in. Someone after 100 years made the move, and the legislator, I want to thank all of you and the people of Minnesota who paid for this, restoring this incredible piece of Minnesota history, this legacy to our democracy, legacy to our past and the future that will come before us, happened under Governor Dayton's watch. And I now have the privilege of having a beautiful view down the hall, and I know the governor had his office over on the top floor of the Veterans Building for a long time. Bottom floor. That's an even better story. But once again, paying it forward so that future generations who use this building and the school children who come through here by the tens of thousands would admire it. And I think that's the second thing. They were very specific. The governor didn't want us to go on because we certainly can about the accomplishments. But I think being noted, and this comes to me as a parent and as a teacher, the commitment to the littlest Minnesotans and the change of course from all-day kindergarten and the emphasis that Mark Dayton put on our littlest Minnesotans is a legacy that will quite obviously and very truly live on forever. So for that, I am incredibly grateful. Governor Dayton talked about wanting to build a greater Minnesota. It is absolutely apparent that his 8 years serving us as governor, he did exactly that. And I can tell you that the millions of Minnesotans who are grateful for the work he did, I certainly have a position to say that I, for one, know just how grateful I am to understand what this job entails, to do it with the grace and dignity and passion that Mark Dayton did it. I can only hope that I attempt to try and live up to that. And so for me, it is a great privilege. I won't go through the whole thing, but one of the things that we get to do is issue the proclamation, and this proclamation for the numerous contributions to the state of Minnesota allows me to proclaim as governor of Minnesota that Thursday, October 17th is Governor Mark Dayton Day in the state of Minnesota. Thank you. And with that, I think it's appropriate to introduce Governor Dayton's partner in justice, as Peggy Flanagan often says, then Lieutenant Governor, and now our United States Senator, Tina Smith.
Good afternoon. I was just telling Mark earlier that I would have moved hell and high water to be here today, including missing a vote if it came to that. I never told my staff that, so don't tell them, please. It is so wonderful to be here amongst Mark's friends and family and amongst the large and raucous official family that filled up Mark's life and my life for the 8 years of the Dayton administration. I want to thank you, Governor Walz and First Lady Gwen Walz, Lieutenant Governor Flanagan for being here, and also to members of the judiciary and the state legislature and our constitutional officers and all of you who are here. So 10 years ago, in October of 2009, I was a staffer and an organizer working hard to elect the next Democratic governor of Minnesota. And my candidate was not Mark Dayton. 9 years ago, in October of 2010, Mark invited me to a meeting in the card room on the second floor of the Minneapolis Club. And there he asked me to be his chief of staff. And at that point, Mark and I had been working together for roughly 4 weeks, so to say that this was an unexpected turn of events for both of us would be an understatement. And I've always thought that our working relationship started out a little like a political arranged marriage. Arranged, ironically, by Mark's former wife and my dear friend, Elida. And yet here we are, 9 years later, gathered to celebrate the legacy captured in a portrait of Minnesota's 40th governor and my most dear friend. And this, if nothing else, should be a reminder to all of us that life is unpredictable, so be ready for it. It was not clear that we would gather here today to celebrate this portrait. In fact, the journey to getting this portrait made was not an easy one, because Mark, I think rebel would not be too strong a word. He didn't want a portrait. He threatened that if forced, he would make the picture be of the dogs. And I can only imagine the cajoling and badgering employed by Eric and Andrew, Joanna, Bob, Dana, and Katie, and the rest of Mark's extended groups of friends and family to get this done today. So thank you to all of you. So Mark is that rare creature, a humble public servant. And I know that he hates long introductions. And I know this because I have often been blessed to serve as his introducer, where I would do my best to complete my brief remarks quickly while watching him grimace from stage left. I personally witnessed Mark come up on the stage and interrupt a particularly long-winded welcome. But I'm hoping that he will allow me, now that I am a United States Senator, just a few moments. The question of a person's legacy is complicated. One Mark often says should be left to the history books, and he's right. And yet, the raw materials of history are the stories, calendar entries, recollections, successes and failures of a person's life and work, and the pictures. A person's legacy, like life, often is a work in progress, as Mark's life also is a work in progress. Yet life also offers us waypoints like today, where we can stop and consider what's been accomplished so far and what it means, and what this moment tells us about the purpose of it all. And so in that spirit, I'd like to comment on two aspects of Mark's legacy. The first is his work. Now, Mark is a true populist, which means that he believed that power comes from the people, not to the people. He stands on the shoulder of his dear friends Paul Wellstone. And so, as a populist, he campaigned on the core principles of tax fairness, support for public education, and putting people back to work. And he delivered with the help, and sometimes the opposition, of Minnesota's diverse and rich state legislature. He came into the office with a projected $6.2 billion deficit and left with a projected $1.5 billion surplus, plus $2 billion in reserves. Under his stewardship, more people went back to work than ever before in Minnesota. And here, Mark would say, as would I, that that is due to the hard-working people of Minnesota and the great businesses that employ them. Mark put all his muscle into supporting public education, including all-day kindergarten, which he accomplished, and preschool for all, which is still a work in progress. And I never saw him happier as governor than when he was talking to kids and visiting classrooms. He made our tax system more fair and more progressive. And then, He signed gay marriage into law. He led the legislature to pass billions of dollars in much-needed investments in public projects, roads, bridges, wastewater treatment, the University of Minnesota's medical school, the Destination Medical Center. All these projects, plus the projects that are the pride and joy of local communities in every corner of Minnesota, not to mention this magnificent building. Now, Mark often says that he didn't do this alone and that it took a team, and he is right. And I see so many of the people who were a part of this work around us this afternoon. So thank you, all of you, for your service to Minnesota and to our governor. Now, there's another aspect of Mark's legacy that I want to speak about before closing, and this legacy lives in the lives of the people he worked with over the 8 years of his governorship. Every one of us has been deeply touched by the opportunity Mark gave us to serve our state, and each of us is better, wiser, more tenacious, and stronger for having worked with him and for him. And those of us who had the opportunity to serve together in the Dayton administration will always share a deep connection, seasoned by funny stories and long days, and the understanding that Mark gave us all an opportunity to do work of purpose for people. Each one of us has our own sentence that starts with, "If I hadn't worked for Mark Dayton," God knows, I do. But at the end of the day, that sentence ends with some version of the joy of being a part of something that is bigger than any of us, that's about helping people, and that is about some of the most fun we ever had. And we will all spend the rest of our days remembering and appreciating Mark Dayton's quotable quotes, some of which I would like to leave you with today. The most famous, of course, comes from Governor Rudy Perpich and the sign that hung on the wall of the governor's office from the very first day. None of us is as smart as all of us. But there were others. Everyone likes change as long as it happens to somebody else. It's not a choice between me and the Almighty. It's a choice between me and the alternative. For every complicated question, there is a simple answer that is almost always wrong. And if you're going to go to, if you're going through hell, keep going. The corollary is run to trouble. And this one, offered at countless town halls to hundreds of people all across Minnesota. You can call me at 651-201-3468. It's just me and the dogs, and one of us will pick up. These will be a few familiar to Dayton staffers. We're on defense. We need to get back on offense. Or no surprises. And finally, the one that I know all of us who worked closest, Mark, with you will remember. We remember it best through all the babies born, parents lost, weddings, birthdays, high points, and bumps in the road. Family comes first. So thank you, Mark. We love you. Your state loves you. And we will always be family. And that, my friend, is the sweetest legacy. You did very well. You didn't sound intimidating.
It's your podium, Governor.
Nope, I'm all set. Thanks. It's a big advantage to go after somebody who's making fun of you. After I won the DFL primary for governor in 2010, my dear friend, also Elida Messenger, gave me two pieces of excellent advice for the general election. First was, don't blow it. Second was, get Tina Smith involved in the campaign. I didn't know Tina well, but what I remembered most about her was that as a rival candidate's campaign manager, she had recently locked me out of the DFL state convention. Nevertheless, after an inspiring 2-hour lunch, I asked her to take a senior role in the campaign and later become our office's chief of staff. She was so outstanding that I asked her to run with me in 2014. Having to fill a Senate vacancy 3 years later, I asked myself, who would best represent all Minnesotans in the United States Senate? Who would bring unquestioned skill and integrity? And who would most certainly win the respect and friendship of her colleagues? The answer was always clear, Tina Smith. And Senator, you have excelled in every respect. Thank you for honoring me today. Thank you for your friendship. Governor Walz, I would like to thank you and the First Lady for graciously enabling me to hold this ceremony here today, offering your reception room for the gathering following, and designating the incomparable Amanda Simpson to handle the details. I also thank Tara Hummel and the wonderful resident staff for preparing the reception's refreshments. Even more importantly, I want to thank you, Governor Walz and Lieutenant Governor Flanagan, for your outstanding leadership this year. I feel so fortunate to not be in President Obama's ordeal of watching his accomplishments denigrated and destroyed by his successor. I also want to congratulate House Speaker Melissa Hartman and DFL Senate Leader Tom Bach and their caucuses for working so well with you to achieve your successes. And I want to pay my respects to my friend, the Senate Majority Leader Paul Gazelka, with whom I could always disagree honestly and honorably. But there is one problem, Governor, I do have. I almost didn't appoint Tina to the Senate because she shot my pheasant at the previous pheasant opener. And having gone 0 for 8 in the governor's pheasant opener, it was really hard for me to take that you nailed one the first year. But congratulations, better hunter than I. And I regret that time doesn't allow me to cite everybody here. However, I do want to pay special tribute to the Chief Justice of the Minnesota Supreme Court, Lori Gilday. For 8 years, I served with the Chief Justice on the State Board of Pardons in meetings which frequently took 4 or 5 hours, trying to exercise the wisdom of Solomon with people seeking absolutions for their previous offenses. I developed great respect for her wisdom and her strength of her convictions, and I also thank the other justices who honor me by being here today. Thank you. I want to especially recognize the members of my immediate family. I've been blessed with 2 phenomenal sons, Eric and Andrew. I'm enormously proud of both of them for who they are and for what they have already accomplished in their lives, which far exceed mine at their ages. And I'm blessed also to have a sensational daughter-in-law, Corey Ayler Dayton, who amazingly manages 3 males, soon to become 4. And 2 wonderful grandsons, Hugo, age 6, and George, 2.5. To all of you who are here today, each one of you is so special to me. Your friendship, support, guidance, and assistance have meant more than I can express. I'm deeply grateful to you. As you may know, and others have said, at first I wasn't enthusiastic about this portrait thing. For years I said I would just send in a Polaroid snapshot. But there are three things that changed my mind. First, my sons, Andrew and Eric, found a terrific portrait artist, Paul Oxborough, who's here today. I want to thank you, Paul, for your patience and perseverance with me. As everyone in this room knows, I'm not easy. Paul said that no subject likes his or her portrait, but he graciously tolerated my endless suggestions until I finally realized that the portrait's deficiencies were not with the artist, but with the subject. Then in July, when I was still wavering, Eric took charge and drove me out to Paul's studio where we made the final adjustments. So thank you, Eric, and thank you, Paul. Secondly, while I was governor, I wanted nothing to do with something that signified not only the end of my 2 terms as governor, but also the conclusion of my 50-year career in public service. Nevertheless, last January 7th arrived, and someone changed the locks at the governor's residence. I had to drive myself to wherever I was going, while mostly following the speed limit, and then park and have to walk outrageous distances to the front door. The adjustment was very hard. Suddenly, without all of you, and without the endless challenges that made every day as governor worth living. But I'm now looking forward to the new opportunities ahead. And if Hugo or George goes looking for me during a class trip here, I want them to see more than a Polaroid. Thirdly, I really like the idea of highlighting the Capitol. This fabulous renovation will shine long after I'm gone. And I would like to be remembered for chairing the commission which guided it throughout. It is remarkable that in this era of partisan rancor, a $300+ million project was approved, funded, and completed in a cooperative, bipartisan partnership supported by most of the people of Minnesota. More than anything during my 8 years as governor, our success gave me faith that when the cause is great enough and the stakes are high enough, we can pull together and make it work. That's the prerequisite for a viable democracy. It's also the requirement for its continuation. These days, it's too easy to believe that our country's rancorous divisions are unprecedented and unchangeable. Yet they've happened before. The Revolutionary War was deeply divisive. Many colonists were Tories, while their sisters and brothers suffered and died for our independence. The Civil War was even more brutal, and its aftermath remains so, especially for African Americans in the South. Over 150 years later, our country is still being damaged by vicious prejudices and atrocities. Yet our democracy has survived. Despite flaws and failures, generations of Americans have created and sustained the most advanced and successful form of self-government the human race has ever devised. It's worth preserving and enhancing. That has been the larger aim to which I've dedicated my 50 years in public service, most of them in Minnesota and 20 of them in this extraordinary building. Here's where I met, got to know, and became lasting friends with many of you. Our friendships are among my life's most priceless treasures. I miss being with you now more than I can say. And I'm proud of what we accomplished together. I wish it were more. But part of democracy's genius is that no one gets to have it all their own way. Nonetheless, the bonds we established by striving together, through victories and defeats, form the rich mosaic which underlies this portrait. All of you are right here in with me. So I thank you for being here today, and I thank you so much for enriching my life.
Thank you, Governor Dayton, and for all of the things and the accomplishments that will last and move and ring into the future. I personally want to thank you for, and obvious here tonight to everyone, the way you conduct yourself and being a role model. And it's hard to understand how to do this job, but when you have someone like Mark Dayton to follow, and you have a model to look at, I am incredibly grateful for that. So thank you, Mark. To Tina and to the two of you, I think it's been pretty obvious that the friendship and the teamwork and what you were able to do together was a big part of this administration. I have been blessed to have a partner in justice with Lieutenant Governor Flanagan, and I think you see the model that you put into place. We are building on that, and we thank you for that. And on behalf of my wife Gwen and Hope, to the Dayton family, thank you for being role models on how we conduct ourselves. It's a strange change, as you know, to be in that spotlight and live your own lives, and you've done it with such dignity, with such passion and such accomplishments. It inspires us and role models for my children. So we thank you all, to everyone who's here. Thank you for sharing this moment. This portrait will hang as long as this is a state, and countless school children who were the focus of Mark Dayton will walk by there, look at the picture and read the plaque and understand what a part of their legacy and their lives that Mark Dayton played. And that is a special thing, and you have certainly earned that. To the rest of you, on behalf of Lieutenant Governor Flanagan, my wife Gwen and myself, we invite you to the reception room for food and drinks, and I'm imagining some very good and funny stories. So thank you all, and thanks for coming. Thank you. Pictures.